Mall mechanism. On July 26, 2015, late in the morning, an escalator at the Onliang department store in Jingzhou, Hubei, moved with its usual hum. The mall's weekend crowd flowed toward the upper floors. Staff had noted a loose access panel near the landing. Xiang Liujuan, a 30-year-old mother, rode up with her toddler son after a routine shopping stop. She noticed the floor plate shift as she stepped off, a flicker of danger that forced a split-second choice. She pushed her child forward into the arms of a nearby employee. Witnesses later recalled her steady voice as she tried to keep the boy calm. Then the panel caved beneath her feet. She dropped waist-deep into the machinery, the moving treads feeding her clothing downward. The gears seized her legs, crushing soft tissue and bone. Mall staff hit stop buttons and tried to pull her up, but the system resisted. Within minutes, responders arrived with tools and technicians worked to open the housing. Despite frantic efforts, her injuries were catastrophic. Emergency services stabilized the area and coordinated a prolonged extraction. Paramedics assessed her condition and found no signs of life. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The coroner cited massive internal trauma consistent with mechanical crushing. Investigators later determined the escalator should have been shut down. Authorities ordered nationwide inspections, and the store closed temporarily while officials sanctioned employees and fined the operator. Scarf strangulation. On March 15, 1997, during the evening rush, commuters crisscrossed a Washington District of Columbia metro station. The air felt cool from outside winds, and riders wore heavy coats and scarves. Escalators ran continuously as platforms filled. A 37-year-old man descended with the crowd, his long coat brushing the moving steps. Near the bottom landing, fabric caught along the comb plate where the steps flattened. He tried to free himself while the machine tugged harder, and a scarf tightened around his neck. Nearby passengers shouted for help and moved toward the emergency stop. Then the tension increased as the steps pressed forward. The constriction around his airway worsened, and he slumped. Bystanders hit stop controls and called for assistance. Station personnel arrived with cutters and pried at the trapped material, while others attempted basic life support. The entanglement had already caused severe neck trauma and asphyxia. Paramedics reached the scene within minutes and initiated advanced resuscitation. Despite repeated efforts and airway support, the victim did not recover. He was pronounced dead at the station. The medical examiner ruled death by asphyxiation. The incident prompted escalator safety audits within the transit system, and officials expanded warnings about loose clothing and long garments near comb plates. Stadium entrapment. On July 20th, 2002, late at night after a baseball game at Angel Stadium in Anaheim, California, families and fans streamed toward exits. The stadium lights reflected on polished floors and escalators funneled the departing crowd. People carried souvenirs and snacks while children clutched foam fingers. A 12-year-old boy stepped onto a descending escalator with relatives nearby. His right shoe slid too close to the moving skirt panel. The toe wedged against the step edge, and the mechanism pulled his foot inward. He lost balance and cried out as the rail pressed him down, trapping his lower leg against the machinery. Suddenly, the escalator continued its cycle as bystanders reacted. Staff hit emergency stop switches and tried to free his shoe, but the position locked tight. Blood pooled as the pressure crushed soft tissue. Within moments, security cleared the area. The family called for help as the boy's breathing quickened and then slowed. Paramedics arrived quickly, used tools to release him, and transported him to a nearby hospital. He suffered severe crush injuries and significant blood loss. Despite transfusions and surgical preparation, his injuries proved fatal, and he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Investigators evaluated the escalator design and maintenance practices. The case contributed to consumer product reviews and reinforced child safety guidance near escalators. Casino rail fall. On April 7th, 2016, around midnight, a hotel and casino in New Orleans, Louisiana, buzzed with music and chatter. Conference attendees mingled near the atrium. Escalators glided between floors as guests drifted between bars and gaming areas. James Edward Darst, 54 years old, joked with companions near the upper landing. He climbed onto the handrail to slide down, a risky dare that onlookers sometimes attempted. The glossy rail carried him briefly before his balance shifted. He pitched outward into the open space beside the steps. Then he fell about 20 feet, striking a level below. The impact caused severe head trauma and internal bleeding. Security staff converged and radioed for medical assistance while guests stepped back. Within minutes, responders stabilized him with cervical support and oxygen. Paramedics initiated transport toward a trauma center. His condition deteriorated during transit despite ongoing support. He was pronounced dead en route due to blunt force injuries. The coroner ruled accidental death, and reports noted alcohol involvement. The venue later installed additional barriers and warning signs, and organizers issued safety advisories for late-night events. By the way, if you're finding this interesting, I upload content like this often. Consider subscribing. Metro Child Crush. On October 15, 2015, early afternoon crowds moved through Hongqihigu Station in Chongqing, China. Families navigated the concourse and announcements echoed across tiled walls. An escalator rose towards street, level with a steady stream of riders. A 4-year-old boy strayed near the moving handrail as his guardian glanced away. He touched the rail where it met the steps and his small arm slipped into a narrowing gap. The motion drew him downward, pinning his torso. His cries brought station staff running. Then the escalator continued to inch forward with momentum as personnel hit emergency stop switches. The child remained trapped between components where space was tightest. Responders used tools to force open a panel while others attempted to calm the guardian. Minutes passed before they pulled him free with visible injuries to the chest and abdomen. Paramedics transported him rapidly to a nearby hospital. He suffered internal bleeding and went into cardiac arrest. Despite emergency interventions, he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The case was treated as a tragic accident. Station operators reviewed procedures, and local authorities called for heightened child supervision in crowded transit areas. Elderly fall trauma. On September 11, 2000, near midday, shoppers moved through a retail store in Richmond Heights, Ohio. The escalator rose toward housewares on an upper level. Overhead lighting cast bright rectangles across the metal treads. An 85-year-old woman approached the top landing with a small bag in one hand. As she stepped forward, she lost balance and fell backward onto the moving steps. Her body rolled down several treads while metal edges struck her head and trunk. Shoppers nearby shouted for help. Then store employees reached the stop controls and froze the escalator. The woman lay motionless as a clerk checked for breathing and a pulse. A call went out to emergency services. The scene grew quiet as employees asked customers to clear the aisle. Paramedics arrived within minutes and initiated care. They immobilized her spine, secured an airway, and prepared rapid transport. Despite these measures, she went into cardiac arrest en route. She was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at the hospital, the cause attributed to blunt impact injuries. Officials classified the death as accidental. The retailer installed additional handholds and posted fall risk notices for seniors near escalators. Mall rail plunge. On January 10, 2016, morning shoppers gathered inside a mall in Kunming, Yunnan Province, China. An atrium opened above a lower level and escalators framed the space. Children played while caretakers browsed store windows. Shimei, 3 years old, moved toward the escalator rail with youthful curiosity. She climbed onto the smooth surface while a relative looked at a display. The rail carried her hands forward, and she lost grip. She tipped outward over open air beside the moving steps. Then she fell multiple stories, striking the floor of the atrium. The impact drew gasps from nearby shoppers. Security personnel rushed to the scene and ushered people aside. A guard checked for signs of life while calling for medical assistance. Paramedics arrived quickly and assessed her condition. The injuries were incompatible with survival, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Her family received immediate support from staff. Authorities recorded the death as accidental. The mall installed child barriers near escalator railings and participated in a local campaign urging closer supervision of young children in public spaces. Subway reverse crush. On July 5, 2011, morning commuters flooded a busy Beijing subway station. The upward escalator from the platform carried a dense line of riders. Loudspeakers announced arrivals as crowds pressed forward. A 13-year-old boy rode among adults near the center of the moving steps. Without warning, the escalator lurched and reversed direction. The steps accelerated downward toward the lower landing, driving passengers into each other. People screamed as they lost footing and fell in a growing pile. Then the mass of bodies pinned the boy at the base. The pressure compressed his chest as more riders collapsed. Staff slammed emergency stops, but momentum and human weight held the pile in place. Workers began lifting people free and responders arrived with stretchers. Paramedics extricated the boy and initiated resuscitation. He was transported to a hospital with crush injuries and internal bleeding. Despite emergency care, he died shortly after arrival. Investigators cited mechanical failure, and officials inspected similar units across the network. The transit system strengthened maintenance protocols and issued recalls related to escalator components, hoodie entanglement. In 2003, during an event at a stadium in St. Louis, Missouri, crowds flowed down escalators between concourses. Music echoed through concrete corridors. Staff monitored entry and exit points as people moved in large groups. A man in his 40s stepped onto a downward escalator wearing a hooded sweatshirt. As he approached the landing, fabric near his neck snagged against a fixed part near the comb area. He reached up to loosen the tension. The escalator continued to feed material into the gap. Then, the hoodie tightened around his airway. Bystanders yelled and hit emergency stop buttons. A security guard pulled at the fabric while another called for medical help. The constriction worsened, and the man slumped against the rail. Paramedics arrived within minutes and initiated resuscitation. They cut through clothing and attempted to restore breathing. Despite efforts, the man did not regain a pulse and was pronounced dead at the scene due to asphyxiation. Officials concluded the death was accidental. accidental. The venue inspected escalator landings and replaced components while adding clothing entanglement warning signs at access points: Metro, Toddler, Choke. In 2003, on a busy day at Minnesota Avenue Station in Washington, District of Columbia, families and commuters mixed on the concourse. Escalators shuttled riders to street level under fluorescent lights. Station attendants watched for crowding. A 3-year-old boy neared the bottom landing with a caretaker. His clothing caught where the steps flattened into the comb plate and the mechanism drew material inward. The child struggled as the fabric tightened across his chest and neck. Nearby riders reacted and pressed emergency stop buttons. Then station staff moved to free him and called emergency services. A worker tried to release the garment with a cutting tool. The child's breathing grew shallow and he became unresponsive. The scene quieted as people cleared space for responders. Paramedics arrived shortly thereafter, initiated resuscitation, and transported him to a nearby hospital. Despite interventions, he was pronounced dead from asphyxiation. Transit officials treated the death as accidental and reviewed equipment design. The system implemented additional child safety warnings and updated procedures near escalator landings. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing so you would not miss future uploads. Thank you for watching.